The Purple Rain came to a stop here in Houston, JD. This was not the game that Washington thought it was going to play. Just terrible against the run at first. And then Michael Penix Jr. and the receivers just out of sorts for a lot of games. Now, look, I think we're going to see a lot of supercuts of Michigan players holding compared to the Roger Rosengarten holding penalty that wiped out a Rome Odunze catch right over here.
Sure, and I mean, I'll have to probably go back and look at how bad some of those holds were, because I'm sure I know a couple of them were bad.
Yeah.
But to the exact same token, like in a championship level game,
yes,
you kind of let them play a little bit more. And at the end of the day, getting moved up front the way they did in that first quarter is, I think, what you look back and say, we can't do that. Can't do that.
They gave up 300 yards on the ground. They averaged 5 yards an attempt through the air.
Yep.
Like, that is what lost Washington this game.
That's the deal.
They were not themselves offensively. And the problem was, I think they kind of were themselves defensively, but unfortunately, themselves wasn't good enough against Michigan's offensive line and running backs.
And they knew that going in. They knew going in, hey, we don't have the physical advantage. We got to kind of throw our way into a different style of ball game. Yeah. And they just never really clicked. I mean, they had that one shot on 4th and 7, Rome Odunze, which they'll be looking back at for a long time here this offseason.
They also had a drop there.
It's tough.
They had a drop in the fourth quarter where they could have kept. Remember, the final score is not indicative of how close this game was. It was 27-20 in the fourth quarter, and it felt like Washington was going to get back.
Yeah, it did. It did. I mean, even when it was 17-3, I was still sitting in that press box thinking, okay, if you told me there was one team that could be down 2 touchdowns and still make it interesting in the fourth quarter, that team was Washington. And Rome Odunze never really got going. Michael Penix didn't look as accurate as he was last week. And a team like Michigan, you just can't have a game where you give them extra ammunition. You can't give them more to feed on. Your margin is very, very low against Michigan.
And I think Michigan was a better tackling team than anything they'd seen all season. There were a lot of plays. Like, there's a Mikey Sanderstill tackle in the first quarter that in most Washington games goes for like 30 yards.
Yeah.
And they didn't get a first down.
Yeah.
It was a third down stop instead. And that's the quality of opponent was what you would expect in a game between two 14-0 teams.
And some of the things you saw from Washington just felt sort of uncharacteristic that were self-inflicted. Like you said, the drops, the Michael Penix Jr. inaccuracies, and you wonder, is that the stage?
Yeah.
Is that the fact that they're playing better talent? There's a lot of, I think, different variables that were baked in there. But I think even going into the game, we knew the path for Washington was more narrow than it was for Michigan to win this football game, and we saw a more complete game from Michigan, and Washington had too many errors.
Dylan Johnson gutting it out. That was a really tough performance from him. He did everything he could. We know he wasn't 100%. It was really cool to watch. And I tell you what, this meant so much to these Washington players. As the Michigan players were celebrating on the field, a lot of Washington stars were just sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Just trying to process what just happened. This is a team that accomplished some really special things. They won the last real Pac-12 title.
Yeah.
And that's the other piece of this. The Pac-12's done. This was the last Pac-12 football game. It's the 2-pack now.
Yeah.
So Washington, like, they need to hold their heads high on this thing because they had an incredible season. They just ran into a little bit better team.
And I think when we look at the timeline for Washington over the next couple of years, I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, will they be in the national title every year? Exactly.
Yeah.
The structure in place at Washington, as they say, the bones are good. So I don't think it's something where you hit the panic button. Now, will you have a national title contender year every single year? Probably not. That's not the way college football works. No. But still, I think Washington's in a good place moving forward, especially the 12-team model.
Well, they're heading into the Big Ten, and who just won the Big Ten? Oh, yeah, Michigan.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see these two teams play quite a bit down the stretch. So hold your heads high, Huskies. You did just fine, and we can't wait to see you play next year.